The next thing I want to do is style the links in my page. Now, links behave a little bit differently than the rest of the content on my page in the sense that they have different states. And here's what I mean. A link in general kind of has four different states. The first one is just its link state. You know, it is a link and therefore it has something to do. Another state is the hover state, and that's what I'm referring to what happens when you actually roll over and hover it. Another state it has is the actual click. When you're right now, if I could zoom in on it, I'm actually holding down on the link and it's turning red. And then one of the final states it has is visited. Now, all these are this darker purple by default because I've visited all these links. But so you want to style these things. And there's a specific order in which you need to define those different states in your CSS in order to get consistent results. And a lot of people call it the love-hate concept for styling because, well, I'll show you right now. We're gonna learn two things. We're gonna learn the love-hate order that the links need to be in, and a CSS concept called pseudo classes. And pseudo classes, well, let me give you an example. So if you recall, a link is the anchor tag. So we target it with A, but that's not enough. We need a pseudo class which starts with a colon and then love-hate, L for link. And that tag right there says what is the link gonna be? How are we going to define just a link in general? The next pseudo class is so love-hate, L, and then the next part of that is V for visited. Now this state is, like I mentioned, when someone has already clicked on the link and they go back to the page, they have a visual indicator of the links they've already clicked through. You know, FYI, when you're styling these things, it's always important to give a visual distinction between these two because that's a very useful thing to know as a visitor. The next one is hate. So H is hover, and that's what it's going to be when the user actually puts their mouse over the link. And the last one is active, and that's when that millisecond well, not a millisecond, at least a split second when the user actually clicks on that link, what it's going to look like. So well, first off, let me open this file in a browser, in a different browser where I haven't visited these links so we could actually make sense, because right now my browser history already says I checked out all of these links, and in Safari I at least have a mix of visited and unvisited links. So let's first start with the link color. Let's go color, and I'm going to do something like, let me go black. I don't really like that color, but it'll at least, okay, we see that there's a visual difference. Here's black for the links I haven't visited, and these are still that purple color for being visited by default. And what I could do here is for color, for the visited links, let me make them green. Just gives us very different colors for effect over here. You know, when you're actually doing it yourself and your professional projects, you want to make these things a little more subtle than what I'm going with over here. But this is just to really enforce the concept. Hover, let's go color. Why don't we do blue? And then active, I'll do red. Now let's see this whole thing in action over here. So I'll refresh my page. Now let me see if I could get everything in one. Okay. Now let me move it here. There we go. So here's the link. So here's a link that I haven't clicked on yet. It's black because it's a link. Okay, that looks good. When I hover over it, it becomes blue, exactly what I defined over there. When I click on it, I'm just going to click and hold. It becomes red. And then once I let it go, Okay, that gives me email. But once I go back to that page, it becomes green like the rest of them. So that's it. You just want to make sure you maintain this order in your document. Now, if you wanted to group these together, you could do that. Obviously, it's not a problem grouping these things together with a comma and going like that. Although that's probably a poor choice. It's a poor choice to have your link and your visited links be the same color, because now the visitor is like, well, what do I know? I don't know what's going on here. Another probably poor choice you'd make is making these things like a different size. Let's go with font weight. Here's a attribute we haven't covered yet, but font weight bold. And now if I refresh it, see what ends up happening? They get bigger, which is kind of cool to a certain extent, but you see it creates the text. It makes the text jumpy, and that's not something you want to do, because it's just it's bad practice, that jumpy kind of text. So you have a lot of power with this linking different was styling links and all that, but use it with caution, because remember, you definitely want to have a distinction between your link and the links that have been visited, and you also don't want to do anything where the text gets jumpy and starts moving around the content, because that's just bad form as well. I'll show you quickly how I decided to style my links. I used the following. For my links, I made them a bit off color. These are actually already visited. If I'll show you what color this is, I'm using a color picker I found online. If you go to colorpicker.com, it gives you the hexadecimal. And by default, the links are this subtle gray color, like here. That's going to be the color of the link. And I put this attribute over here, text decoration, to none. By default, you have that underline for links, which is cool, but I actually want to save that text decoration underline, like I did here, for when people hover over it. And I also changed the color a bit, as you could see with this color picker. I'll just put that in there so you see what color it is. And here it is in action. When the user visits over it, it underlines, which I think is a pretty slick and subtle cue that it's a link, in case they're not sure. And then I just kind of left it red, you see, because it's slightly, I'm using basically tones of gray and red, and the most really loud color in there is the link, so when you actually click it, it becomes way red. And I like how that works. So as you see, I used both a mix of hex colors and just naming colors, and I used text decoration, none for my links, and when they hover they get text decoration of underline. And I also use that in conjunction with this color picker app that's online, and pretty easy to use, nothing special here. You just kind of cruise to whatever part of the color you want. I'm sure you're familiar with something like this. Then you could just copy those numbers in there and add them to your code. Don't forget that in order to define a hex color, you can't just put the six-digit code in there. You have to start with a pound. And pretty simple and straightforward. Just using a bunch of online tools to get my work done.